This is Carola DeVille, and you're watching Inkwife TV. A couple of months ago, I began this tattoo of a sunset with a turtle in the foreground. I've already made one video on the first session of this project, and I'm showing a little bit of how I designed the tattoo and build the stencil on my iPad so that I can just print it out and put it on the client, and then I work from there. I've already showed this first portion of the video, like I said, but I'm going to go through about 5 minutes of showing some of what I did in session 1. To make the little spots on the turtle, I'm just using a 5-round liner and going zigzag back and forth to make those lovely little scales on his flipper. My goal of session 1 was mainly to get the color all in the turtle to get him completed, and then get the shadows up in the water and the skyline so that I don't lose the image of the beach from one appointment to the next. Once I have all the black and gray work on the turtle done, it is time to begin the color. I want to add medium tones of turquoise, which will give most of the color to the turtle. He's primarily turquoise shades, but he's got some greens and browns and burnt oranges added in here and there. I really like the colors that are on sea turtles. I always enjoy tattooing them. Just because the balance of color on them is so pleasant to me artistically. The white touch-ups at the end are definitely some of my favorite. This is when I feel like he really starts to come to life. Now it's time to put color in the flowers on the back side of the arm. This is my one of my least favorite places to tattoo on. For some reason, the skin on the back of the arm is so difficult for me to handle. I always feel like I have to work extra hard to stretch the skin tight enough and to get the ink to go in. But nevertheless, it stayed. And here is the end of session 1. And about 2 months later, she was back in the chair to finish it up. And you can see here all of the color, even the part on the back side of her arm. It stayed very bright and vivid. And I didn't lose any of the gray wash that I had done in the water and the skyline. The sky was primarily going to be purples and oranges, and some of the purples were pretty dark. They were very shadowed, so I began my purple tones and to give my cloud shape using my purple concentrate for the darker shadowed areas of the clouds. Once I had run purple concentrate over everywhere I thought it needed to be. I went back in with a medium purple to give the clouds some mid-purple tones. Once the purple was done, I was ready to apply some burnt orange. That was going to carry the dark color of orange that was going to be needed in the skyline. It was then time to just start adding purples wherever I thought that there were bare spots and it needed it. When I'm doing a skyline or a galaxy, something like that, there is so much layering of colors, one over the other. It's ridiculous. But I run my machine low so that it peppers the skin very gently and mildly, and then the skin can afford to take all of those multiple passes and they won't get torn up or start rejecting the color from overusage. The sky around all the clouds was a very, very pale silvery blue, and it looked great on the iPad screen, but when I went to use the color on her skin, she was kind of tan, and it simply did not show up at all. So I went back over that area with a more medium blue. It's still pretty light, but it's more blue, just so that the sky had the blue tone that I felt it needed to contrast with the rest of the strong colors. Sometimes when you're working on a tattoo that is based off of a natural photograph, the colors, though they might look really good on a screen, on an electronic screen or on a printed piece of paper, when you go to use those colors on the skin, they don't always show up in the same ways. So you've got to know what colors are going to work best together to get the effect that you want, and sometimes you got to ramp up your exposures on the colors a little bit to get them to give the effect that you want on the skin. It can't always be exactly like the photograph, so work with it. I had to ramp up my blue, and in some other areas I had to ramp the oranges up, make them a little more intense than they otherwise would have been, or the areas that I was working on would not have had the definition that I was wanting. So, a tattoo is a piece of art, and while I am copying a painting, or a photograph, I'm copying a photograph, there's always a little bit of artist leniency involved in making the application work, if you get what I'm saying. So back to the tattoo. Most of the sky was finished. There's a sunset down in the bottom. It's going to stand out a little bit better when we get some dark water around it. So I'm using true grays. There was some true gray tones in the photograph of the water, so I thought that would be good to start the water out with, to get the skin opened up and prepped for taking in more ink. I'm using those light blue that I used up in the sky because I definitely want those colors reflected down in the wave below. I also wanted some of those colors reflecting in the foam that is coming off the waves. Again, again, this is one of the areas in which I deviated from the photograph a little bit. It had just the slightest hint of color in the foam, but as I looked at it, I thought, you know, if I enhance that just a little bit, it will add so much to the reflectivity and the life and the you know, the dark and light contrast of this tattoo, and I don't regret it at all. I'm glad I added a little bit of extra blue, and there's a hint of orange that I add later in some of the spots. I'm now going in with a medium turquoise to fill in some of the areas of the water, and then it's time to use the very dark turquoise, last color that I use. And because the skin has been run over several times, this dark turquoise will slip right in perfectly and lay in that skin, and I won't have to work it hard at all to make the colors look concentrated on one side, but I mean they also feather out so nicely when you add those dark tones at the end. We needed some more orange reflecting in that wave too, so we're adding that in, and some really light golden yellows to finish it off. And there's that orange I was talking about, just a touch of it in the tops of the waves and the blues and the shadows. Gives it a lot of life. And then I kind of muted it so it wouldn't be too bright with a little gray. The last thing to do was to add details up into the surf, but you can't see that very well, so we don't show much of that. And here's the end. Isn't she beautiful? And this client of mine, when she heals, her colors stay, so there's no doubt that this will just be so bright when it is done. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.